At 1:43 a.m., the Persian Gulf looked dead. Just black water stretching endlessly beneath the moonlight as the USS Dwight D. Eisenhower Carrier Strike Group moved silently through the darkness. From a distance, the fleet looked almost peaceful. Massive warships gliding across calm seas beneath a clear night sky. But beneath that silence, tension was building across the Middle East faster than anyone realized. For 72 straight hours, the region had been spiraling toward disaster. American airstrikes on Iranian-backed militia targets in Iraq and Syria had killed several senior commanders connected to the Revolutionary Guard. Iranian state television immediately promised retaliation. Satellite images revealed missile batteries repositioning near the Strait of Hormuz. U.S. intelligence intercepted communications suggesting Iranian naval forces were preparing coordinated operations across multiple fronts. Oil markets began fluctuating wildly as analysts warned the world's most important shipping corridor could become an active war zone within hours. Inside the Eisenhower, radar operators monitored hundreds of moving signals across the Gulf, while fighter crews waited beside fully armed aircraft on the flight deck. Every sailor on board understood the reality of the situation. One mistake, one missile, one bad decision from either side could ignite a regional war that dragged in half the world before sunrise. Then the alarms erupted. Radar systems detected multiple ballistic launches originating from southern Iran near Bandar Abbas. Within seconds, glowing red warning symbols flooded combat screens across the Carrier Strike Group as missiles accelerated over the Gulf at terrifying speed. American destroyers immediately activated Aegis missile defense systems, while emergency combat procedures spread across every ship in the fleet. Sailors sprinted through narrow corridors under flashing red lights, while fighter pilots raced toward waiting Super Hornets on the flight deck. The first interceptor missiles launched seconds later. Bright streaks exploded upward from U.S. destroyers surrounding the carrier group, cutting through the darkness like white spears aimed at the sky. High above the Persian Gulf, violent flashes erupted as interceptors collided directly with incoming Iranian missiles. Burning fragments scattered across the atmosphere, while shockwaves rolled through the night sky. But not every missile disappeared. One ballistic missile broke through defensive coverage and slammed into the water dangerously close to the Eisenhower. The explosion sent a massive wall of seawater crashing over sections of the carrier, while the shockwave rattled steel compartments deep below deck. Emergency systems activated instantly as sailors scrambled to inspect possible structural damage throughout the ship. Before crews could fully react, a second threat appeared: drone swarms. Dozens of Iranian Shahed drones crossed low over the Gulf simultaneously, spreading across multiple attack vectors designed to overwhelm American defenses. Their engines echoed across the water like mechanical insects as they closed rapidly on the Carrier Strike Group. U.S. fighter jets launched immediately into the darkness while destroyers opened fire using close-in weapon systems that filled the night with thousands of tracer rounds. Explosions lit the horizon continuously. Some drones vanished in midair after direct missile impacts. Others spiraled, burning into the ocean after being shredded by defensive gunfire. But the swarm kept advancing. Several drones slipped through defensive fire and struck a nearby support vessel, triggering a violent fireball visible for miles across the Gulf. Flames poured into the night sky, while emergency crews fought desperately to contain the damage. At the same moment, the crisis exploded beyond the Persian Gulf. Iranian-backed militia groups launched rockets toward U.S. military bases in Iraq. Hezbollah forces intensified attacks against northern Israel using heavy rocket barges launched from southern Lebanon. Across Syria, multiple armed factions aligned with Tehran began mobilizing near American positions. Simultaneously, Houthi forces in Yemen prepared anti-ship missile systems aimed at commercial shipping routes inside the Red Sea. The region was igniting all at once. Inside Washington, emergency meetings began unfolding deep inside the White House Situation Room. Intelligence agencies flooded military officials with satellite imagery, intercepted communications, and battlefield updates arriving faster than analysts could process them. Maps covering the walls displayed missile trajectories, naval movements, drone swarms, and regional attack zones spreading across the Middle East in real time. Military planners feared the nightmare scenario they had warned about for years was finally unfolding. A synchronized pressure campaign involving Iran and nearly every major proxy force connected to Tehran. Back in the Gulf, American fighter jets continued intercepting drones beneath skies illuminated by explosions and smoke. Navy destroyers remained locked into full missile defense posture, while radar operators searched desperately for additional launches from the Iranian coastline. Oil tankers attempting to escape the region altered course frantically as commercial shipping companies suspended operations near the Strait of Hormuz. Global markets reacted instantly. Oil prices surged violently before dawn as fears spread that shipping lanes could collapse entirely if fighting escalated further. Stock futures across Europe and Asia plunged while governments rushed to assess how long global energy supplies could survive a prolonged regional conflict. Then new intelligence arrived. Satellite surveillance detected Iranian missile batteries repositioning deeper inland, alongside mobile anti-ship launch platforms capable of targeting American warships hundreds of miles away. Underground Revolutionary Guard facilities showed signs of increased activity, while military convoys dispersed toward hardened defensive positions across southern Iran. The Pentagon understood exactly what this meant. Iran was preparing for the possibility of direct war with the United States. American military commanders immediately accelerated response planning. Strategic bombers stationed in the region received updated targeting packages, while submarines moved into launch positions beneath surrounding waters. Cruise missiles sat ready inside launch tubes, awaiting final authorization. Meanwhile, the battlefield continued expanding. Houthi missile launches near Yemen triggered panic throughout commercial shipping routes in the Red Sea. One cargo vessel reported a nearby explosion before communications abruptly disappeared. International naval forces operating near the region shifted into emergency alert status as fear spread that global maritime trade routes were becoming active combat zones. Across social media, videos flooded the internet showing missile interceptions, burning ships, explosions over the Gulf, and terrified civilians filming the sky from rooftops throughout the Middle East. Rumors spread faster than facts. Some posts claimed American warships had already been destroyed. Others warned Israeli retaliation against Lebanon was imminent. Panic escalated globally within hours. Inside Iran, massive crowds gathered in public squares waving flags while state television broadcast patriotic footage of missile launches accompanied by triumphant music. Revolutionary Guard commanders declared that retaliation against the United States had only begun and warned that additional responses would follow if American forces expanded operations. The danger now became terrifyingly simple. Every strike increased pressure for a larger counterstrike. Every counterstrike increased the chance of full regional war. And neither side could afford to appear weak once missiles were already flying. By 3:12 a.m., the Persian Gulf had transformed completely. Smoke drifted across burning sections of damaged vessels, while fighter jets roared continuously overhead, searching for new threats. Radar systems remained flooded with hostile contacts. Missile crews waited beside loaded launch systems, preparing for another wave. Rescue teams pulled injured sailors through smoke-filled corridors while commanders struggled to determine whether Iran's first attack had ended or whether something much larger was still coming. Then distant flashes appeared again along the Iranian coastline. Another launch sequence had begun. The second launch wave began at 3:18 a.m. Along the Iranian coastline, multiple missile batteries ignited almost simultaneously, sending bright orange flames across the darkness near Bandar Abbas and Qeshm Island. Satellite systems immediately detected dozens of heat signatures accelerating upward from hardened launch positions buried deep inside mountain terrain. Within seconds, warning alerts flooded American naval networks across the Persian Gulf. This time was different. The first attack had tested defenses. The second wave was designed to break them. Iran launched a coordinated saturation strike involving ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and drone swarms moving toward American naval assets from multiple directions at once. Radar systems aboard U.S. destroyers became overwhelmed with incoming contacts as combat computers attempted to prioritize targets, moving at different speeds and altitudes simultaneously. The Persian Gulf transformed into complete chaos. American interceptors launched continuously into the night sky, while close-in defense systems unleashed non-stop streams of tracer fire over black water, illuminated by explosions. Fighter jets raced between targets, attempting to destroy incoming drones before they reached the carrier group. Missile trails crisscrossed above the Gulf, in every direction as the horizon burned beneath clouds of smoke and fire. Then the first direct hit happened. An Iranian anti-ship missile slammed into a U.S. destroyer operating several miles from the Eisenhower. The impact triggered a violent explosion that tore through sections of the vessel, sending flames erupting hundreds of feet into the air. Burning debris scattered across the water, while emergency distress signals flooded naval communication channels. The entire strike group immediately shifted into emergency survival posture. Nearby warships repositioned aggressively, while helicopters launched rescue operations toward the damaged destroyer, drifting through smoke-filled water. Sailors trapped inside burning compartments fought desperately to contain flooding as secondary explosions erupted across sections of the ship. And still, more missiles kept coming. High above the battlefield, American surveillance aircraft tracked additional Iranian launches deeper inland. Revolutionary Guard missile crews were now firing from mobile platforms hidden throughout southern Iran, making retaliation significantly harder. Several launchers repositioned moments after firing, disappearing into underground tunnel systems designed specifically for prolonged conflict against superior air power. Inside the White House Situation Room, military officials realized the conflict had crossed a dangerous threshold. American casualties were now confirmed. The president authorized retaliatory operations minutes later. Far beneath the Arabian Sea, U.S. submarines received coded launch commands. Seconds afterward, dozens of Tomahawk cruise missiles erupted from the ocean surface and accelerated toward Iran at high speed. Simultaneously, stealth bombers already airborne near regional airspace began moving toward pre-assigned targets connected to Iran's missile infrastructure. The counterattack had begun. Cruise missiles slammed into Iranian radar installations near the southern coastline first, blinding portions of Tehran's defensive network. Moments later, explosions ripped through Revolutionary Guard command compounds, missile storage facilities, and launch sites spread across multiple provinces. Satellite feeds showed massive fireballs consuming strategic military installations, while thick smoke rose across southern Iran. Iranian air defenses opened fire wildly into the darkness. Surface-to-air missiles streaked upward over major military zones as anti-aircraft batteries attempted to track incoming stealth aircraft they could barely detect. Several missile depots exploded catastrophically after secondary detonations, triggered chain reactions powerful enough to shake nearby cities. But instead of slowing down, the war intensified further. Iranian fast attack boats armed with rockets and explosives surged into the Strait of Hormuz in massive numbers, attempting to disrupt American warships and commercial tankers simultaneously. U.S. helicopters immediately engaged them above the water using Hellfire missiles and heavy machine gun fire. Explosions erupted across the Gulf as speedboats vanished into walls of flame and smoke. Meanwhile, Hezbollah expanded attacks against northern Israel. Thousands of rockets crossed into Israeli territory within hours, overwhelming portions of the Iron Dome defense system through sheer volume. Air raid sirens echoed continuously across major cities while civilians crowded into underground shelters. In response, Israeli fighter jets launched large-scale retaliatory strikes against Hezbollah positions throughout southern Lebanon and parts of Syria. The Middle East was now collapsing in a multi-front warfare. Global panic accelerated by the minute. Oil prices exploded past emergency thresholds not seen in decades, while stock markets across Europe, Asia, and the United States suffered immediate crashes. International airlines suspended routes throughout the region. Shipping companies abandoned operations near the Strait of Hormuz entirely. Governments worldwide began preparing emergency energy contingency plans, fearing global supply chains could collapse if fighting continued. Across social media, millions watched the war unfold live. Videos captured missile interceptions over the Gulf, burning ships drifting through black water, massive explosions inside Iran, and fighter jets streaking across night skies above Israel and Lebanon. Rumors spread uncontrollably online, claiming American ground invasions were imminent, while others warned Iran could target Saudi oil facilities next. Inside Tehran, military leaders feared something even worse. American stealth bombers had not yet fully entered the conflict. Iranian intelligence estimated that larger strike packages targeting underground nuclear infrastructure and hardened command bunkers were already being prepared if escalation continued. Revolutionary Guard commanders began dispersing leadership personnel deeper into fortified underground complexes, while additional missile batteries repositioned toward defensive zones protecting Tehran itself. Then another disaster struck. At 4:41 a.m., a commercial oil tanker attempting to flee the Strait of Hormuz suffered a direct missile impact near its engine section. Satellite footage showed flames engulfing massive portions of the ship, while thick black smoke billowed thousands of feet into the atmosphere. Nearby vessels immediately altered course away from the region as fears spread that the Gulf itself was becoming impossible to navigate safely. The economic consequences became immediate and catastrophic. Energy analysts warned that if the strait remained closed or contested for even several days, global fuel shortages could begin affecting multiple countries almost instantly. Emergency meetings were called throughout Europe and Asia as world leaders scrambled to prevent financial panic from spiraling completely out of control. But inside military command centers, financial collapse was no longer the main concern. The real fear was escalation beyond conventional war. American intelligence intercepted alarming communications suggesting elements inside Iran's military believed regime survival itself might now be at risk if U.S. bombing campaigns intensified further. Analysts feared desperate commanders could consider far more extreme responses if they believed total defeat was approaching. At the Pentagon, strategic forces quietly entered heightened readiness conditions. Nobody announced it publicly. Nobody wanted global panic. But military leadership understood the terrifying reality unfolding beneath the surface of the conflict. The world's most dangerous region was now balanced on the edge of uncontrollable escalation between heavily armed powers with enormous political pressure preventing either side from backing down. As dawn finally began rising over the Persian Gulf, smoke drifted across burning waters filled with wreckage from destroyed drones, shattered boats, and damaged ships. Fighter aircraft continued circling overhead, while missile crews remained locked beside loaded launch systems awaiting further orders. The Eisenhower carrier group survived the night, but the region around it had changed forever. Entire cities across the Middle East now stood under emergency alert status. Missile batteries remained active across multiple countries. Strategic bombers continued moving into range. Intelligence agencies monitored every radar signal and military transmission for signs of what might happen next. Because despite the destruction already unleashed across the region, everyone understood the most terrifying possibility of all. This still might not have been the peak of the war. It might only have been the opening hours.